The testing hall smelled like fear and overconfidence, which on 17 different worlds was apparently the same scent. Kelmora, a mid-ranking bureaucrat from the Tigerian Collective, tapped his claws against his datapad while scanning the competition. 47 species, 47 different ways to fail spectacularly at the Galactic Intelligence Assessment. Oh, but they all thought they were special. By the twin moons of Zerion, muttered Ziltak, whose serpentine body coiled nervously beside him. Have you seen the Quellian representative? That cranium is so large it needs its own gravitational field. Kelmora's four eyes rolled in unison. The Quellians always brought their best. Humedeck stood there like a walking library, his enormous brain housing approximately 3 million calculations per second. Show off. And look at the Zenthari delegation, Ziltak continued, pointing with his forked tongue. They brought their quantum physicist, the one who solved the Heisenberg paradox while still in diapers. Right. Because solving universe-breaking equations as a toddler was perfectly normal. The Zenthari were just another species of intellectual peacocks, flaunting their superior neural pathways like expensive jewelry. But then Kelmora's attention drifted to the back of the hall, where the line continued around a corner. His curiosity got the better of him, and he craned his neck to see what species had drawn the unfortunate last position. That's when he saw her, a human, a single, solitary, human girl. She couldn't have been more than 20 standard years old by Earth measurements. Short by galactic standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail, wearing what appeared to be, was that a university sweatshirt? The kind students wore to casual lectures? Kelmora blinked all four eyes in sequence, certain he was hallucinating. Ziltak, please, tell me you see the human in the back. Oh, I see her all right. Ziltak's scales darkened with amusement. Poor thing. Earth must have scraped the bottom of their gene pool for this competition. Probably some charity case they're using to fill their mandatory participation quota. The girl, apparently named Luna according to her registration badge, was reading a book. An actual, physical book. While every other species representative was reviewing holographic data streams, running mental simulations or meditating to achieve peak cognitive performance, this human was casually flipping through paper pages like she was waiting for a bus. What's she reading? Kelmora asked, his anthropological training kicking in. Ziltak's enhanced vision focused on the book's cover. Something called Pride and Prejudice. Looks like... Fiction? Fiction. The human was preparing for the most important intellectual competition in the galaxy by reading a story about made-up people. This was either the most brilliant psychological warfare in galactic history or the most spectacular case of cultural misunderstanding since the Gornaki tried to negotiate peace treaties through interpretive dance. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted non-binary entities, announced the proctor, a mechanical voice that somehow managed to sound both bored and condescending. Welcome to this cycle's Galactic Intelligence Assessment. Today's trials will test your species' cognitive capabilities across 17 different disciplines. Failure to complete any section within the allotted time will result in immediate disqualification. A collective intake of breath swept through the hall. 17 disciplines. That was 3 more than last cycle. The Galactic Council was clearly raising the stakes. Each species will be represented by one individual, the proctor continued. No technological assistance. No external communication, no neural enhancers, pure, unaugmented intelligence. Kelmora watched as various species representatives began their pre-competition rituals. The Andromedans entered group meditation. The Centauri started humming in harmonic frequencies to synchronize their brainwaves. The vegan delegation began consuming performance-enhancing minerals. And in the back... Luna turned another page. She's either supremely confident or completely insane, Ziltak observed. With humans, those two things aren't mutually exclusive, Kelmora replied, remembering his xenobiology lessons about Earth's most notorious species. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy, not for intelligence, mind you, for surviving things that should have killed them, for thriving in conditions that drove other species to extinction, for being, in the most technical sense, completely and utterly unpredictable. But intelligence, that was a different matter entirely. The first competitor was called Quinlex of the Alterian hegemony, a being whose IQ had been measured at 437 on the standardized scale. His neural pathways were so efficient that his thoughts moved faster than most species could process sensory input. He lasted 43 minutes. When Quinlex emerged from the testing chamber, his usually pristine appearance was disheveled. His 6 arms trembled, his compound eyes had lost their usual sharp focus. He looked like he'd been wrestling with concepts that existed in dimensions his brain couldn't properly comprehend. "How did it go?" asked his handler, a nervous-looking Altarian bureaucrat. Quinlex's response was a single word: impossible. The next competitor, Varshrin of the Crystalline Consortium, fared even worse. 38 minutes. When she emerged, her typically controlled demeanor had cracked. Literally. Stress fractures ran along her translucent skin. "The mathematics," she whispered to her delegation. "The mathematics don't work. They can't work." But they do. One by one, the galaxy's brightest minds entered the testing chamber. One by one, they emerged, looking like they'd stared into the void and found it staring back with a calculus textbook. The Zenthari physicist lasted 51 minutes, a new record, but still far from completion. The Quellian mathematician managed 50 minutes before his enormous brain apparently decided to take a mental vacation. "This is unprecedented," muttered Ziltak. "No one's even coming close to finishing. What kind of test are they running in there?" Kelmora had been wondering the same thing. The galactic intelligence assessment was challenging, certainly, but not impossible. The highest-scoring species typically managed completion times between 90 minutes and 2 hours. But these weren't just failures. These were intellectual meltdowns. As the afternoon wore on, the hall began to take on the atmosphere of a disaster zone. Competitors emerged in various states of cognitive distress. Some were catatonic. Others were muttering equations that violated known mathematical principles. A few had to be sedated, and through it all, Luna kept reading her book. "Doesn't she realize what's happening?" Ziltak asked, his voice a mixture of fascination and horror. "I think she's aware," Kelmora replied, noting how the human's eyes occasionally flicked up to observe the latest casualty. "She's just not concerned." Not concerned? The greatest minds in the galaxy are being reduced to gibbering idiots and she's not concerned? But that was exactly what made it fascinating. Every other species representative had spent the day growing increasingly agitated as the failure rate became apparent. Stress pheromones filled the air. Nervous energy crackled through the hall like static electricity. Luna, meanwhile, had moved on to Chapter 7. The sun was setting through the hall's massive windows by the time her name was finally called. 46 species had entered the testing chamber. 46 species had failed to complete the assessment. The longest anyone had lasted was 53 minutes. "Lunar Rivers of Earth," the proctor announced. She closed her book, marked her place with what appeared to be a grocery store receipt, and stood up. No fanfare, no ritual preparation, no last-minute cramming. She just walked to the testing chamber like she was heading to class. "Credits on her lasting 30 minutes, someone whispered. 25, maximum, came another voice. "I'll give her 15 minutes before she starts crying." But Kelmora found himself watching her with growing interest. There was something about her posture, her expression, the way she moved. Not confidence exactly, more like resignation. As if she'd already accepted whatever was waiting for her in that chamber, or maybe she knew something the rest of them didn't. The testing chamber sealed behind her with a soft hiss. The hall fell silent, except for the quiet hum of environmental systems and the occasional nervous clicking of various species' appendages. Then they waited. 30 minutes passed. No emergence. 40 minutes. Still nothing. 50 minutes. The hall was getting restless. An hour. Complete silence from the chamber. "Something's wrong," Ziltak whispered. "No one's lasted this long. Maybe the test malfunctioned?" But Kelmora was beginning to suspect something entirely different. Something that made his mandibles click with anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, they were about to witness something unprecedented. Maybe the quiet human girl in the university sweatshirt was about to make galactic history. Or maybe she was about to prove that sometimes the last shall be first. The clock continued ticking. 90 minutes. The hall had gone from restless to silent to something approaching religious awe. Kelmora's datapad showed the longest previous record, 53 minutes, 12 seconds. Luna had shattered that barrier 40 minutes ago and showed no signs of stopping. "This is impossible," breathed Dr. Yexnall, the Quellian delegation leader. His massive cranium was actually sweating, which Kelmora hadn't known was physically possible. The test is designed to break cognitive barriers. No single mind should be able to process that much information for this long. Ziltak's scales had shifted to a pale blue, indicating extreme confusion. Maybe she's unconscious? Or dead? Humans are fragile, right? But the chamber's biomonitors were still active, displaying steady vital signs on the main screen. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Breathing, normal. Brain activity, off the charts. Look at those neural patterns, whispered Dr. Fimro, a Laltarian brain specialist who had rushed over from the medical wing. They're not following any known cognitive architecture. It's like she's using parts of her brain that shouldn't even be connected. Kelmora studied the readouts with growing fascination. Human brains were supposed to be inefficient, prone to distraction, limited by their organic structure. Yet Luna's neural activity showed perfect synchronization across all regions. No wasted energy, no competing processes, just smooth, elegant information flow. Perhaps the humans have been hiding their true capabilities, suggested Vorkath, an intelligence analyst from the Draconian Republic. Maybe this is some kind of genetic modification program they've been running in secret. Unlikely. Dr. Yexnal shook his massive head. Our surveillance of Earth shows no advanced genetic engineering programs. Their technology is still primitive by our standards. Then how do you explain this? Vorkath gestured at the monitoring displays. Nobody had an answer. 2 hours. The proctors were starting to panic. Several had begun huddled consultations, their mechanical voices creating a low buzzing that filled the hall. This wasn't supposed to happen. The test was calibrated to challenge but not destroy. It was meant to find the limits of intelligence, not transcend them entirely. Word was spreading through the galactic communication networks. Representatives from species not even participating in the assessment were requesting emergency transport to witness the phenomenon. The ethereal collective, who rarely bothered with physical reality, had actually manifested 3 observers in the corner of the hall. Should we stop the test? Asked Proctor Unit 7, its voice carrying an unusual note of uncertainty. Negative, replied the lead proctor. Assessment parameters remain within acceptable ranges. Subject shows no signs of distress, but privately, the AI systems were running continuous diagnostic checks. This level of performance wasn't just unprecedented, it was theoretically impossible. The test had been designed by a coalition of the galaxy's greatest minds, incorporating fail-safes and complexity barriers that should prevent any single being from achieving total mastery. Alert. Requesting emergency consultation with Assessment Design Committee, transmitted Proctor Unit 3 on a secured channel. Within minutes, holographic projections of the test's creators began appearing around the hall. Dr. Zenmira of the Cosmic Syndicate, Professor Lixnell from the Regelian Institute, the infamous Krelvex, whose IQ was so high it couldn't be measured on standard scales. They all watched Luna's readings with expressions ranging from confusion to outright terror. The temporal mechanics section, Professor Lixnell was muttering, reviewing the test logs. She solved the causality paradox in under 6 minutes. We predicted that problem would take at least 40 minutes for even the most advanced minds. Look at her approach to the quantum consciousness module, Dr. Zenmira added, her voice tight with disbelief. She's not just solving the problems, she's creating entirely new theoretical frameworks on the fly. Krelvex, whose species communicated primarily through mathematical concepts, was projecting equations into the air around him. His calculations showed that Luna's performance was not just breaking records, it was rewriting the fundamental assumptions about intelligence itself. 2 hours and 30 minutes. The gathered delegations had stopped making jokes about the human. Instead, they were making increasingly frantic calls to their homeworlds, trying to explain a situation that defied explanation. The Zenthari physicist was actually taking notes, muttering about unprecedented neural efficiency and impossible cognitive load distribution. Her brain should be melting, observed Tulvan, a Regelian neurobiologist. The information density in that chamber would cause synaptic overload in any known species, yet her readings are stable, more than stable, Kelmora realized. They were elegant. While other test subjects had shown chaotic spikes of neural activity, desperate surges of mental energy as they struggled with increasingly difficult problems, Luna's patterns remained smooth and controlled. It was like watching a master musician play a complex symphony with effortless grace. "I've been studying human cognitive patterns for decades," Talvern continued, his voice filled with academic frustration. "They're supposed to be emotional creatures, irrational, prone to making decisions based on feelings rather than logic. Yet this individual is demonstrating pure rational thought at levels we've never recorded." "Maybe that's the key," suggested Dr. Nimtal, a psychologist from the Vegan Confederation. "What if human emotion isn't a weakness, but a different kind of processing system? What if their so-called irrationality is actually a form of parallel computing we don't understand?" The idea sent ripples of unease through the assembled observers. If humans were using emotional processing as a cognitive enhancement tool, it would explain their reputation for finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. Their famous unpredictability might not be a flaw, but a feature. "Impossible," Dr. Yexnol protested. "Emotion and logic are fundamentally incompatible. You cannot optimize for both rational thought and emotional processing. Tell that to the human currently rewriting the laws of cognitive science," Dr. Nimtal replied dryly. 2 hours and 45 minutes. The test chamber's internal monitoring systems were beginning to show strain, not from Luna's performance, but from the sheer complexity of the problems the adaptive algorithms were generating in response to her success. The system was creating challenges that pushed the boundaries of known mathematics, physics, and philosophy. "Alert! Memory storage approaching maximum capacity," announced Proctor Unit 9. "Adaptive algorithms generating problems beyond original parameter specification." This was getting dangerous. The test was designed to adapt to the subject's abilities, but it had never been intended to generate truly impossible problems. If the system continued escalating, it might create logical paradoxes that could damage the chamber's quantum processing cores. "Should we implement emergency shutdown protocols?" asked the lead proctor. Before anyone could respond, something extraordinary happened. The chamber's difficulty curve, which had been climbing steadily for nearly 3 hours, suddenly leveled off. Not because the system had reached its limits, but because Luna had somehow communicated with it. "Impossible," breathed Krelvex. "The test chamber is a closed system. There's no interface for subject-system communication." But the monitoring logs showed clear evidence of data exchange. Luna hadn't just been solving the problems, she had been analyzing the system itself, understanding its architecture, learning its patterns, and now, apparently, she was offering suggestions for optimization. She's helping the test improve itself," Dr. Zen Mira whispered. "This isn't just intelligence. This is intuitive system integration at a level we've never imagined possible." 3 hours, that's when the first anomaly appeared on the monitoring systems. The test chamber's difficulty algorithms, designed to adapt and escalate based on the subject's performance, were reaching their maximum parameters. The system was literally running out of ways to challenge her. But rather than breaking down under the impossible load, the system was actually performing better than ever. Luna's suggestions were streamlining its processes, eliminating redundancies, optimizing its cognitive challenge algorithms in real time. "Alert! Assessment protocol reaching theoretical limits," announced the lead proctor. "Subject continues to demonstrate satisfactory performance across all disciplines." Satisfactory performance, the understatement of the millennium. The holographic observers from the Assessment Design Committee were frantically taking notes, recording every aspect of Luna's interaction with their system. This wasn't just a test subject breaking records. This was a fundamental breakthrough in understanding the nature of intelligence itself. "We need to document everything," Professor Lixnol was saying. "This could revolutionize cognitive science across the galaxy." "Assuming we can understand what she's actually doing," Dr. Zenmura replied. "Her problem-solving approaches don't match any known cognitive models." 3 hours and 15 minutes. The chamber's biomonitors showed something new. Luna's vital signs were not just stable, they were improving. Her heart rate had dropped to a relaxed 55 beats per minute. Her brain chemistry showed elevated levels of compounds associated with satisfaction and mild amusement. She was enjoying herself, while the greatest minds in the galaxy watched in stunned silence, while AI systems pushed themselves to their absolute limits trying to challenge her. While centuries of scientific understanding crumbled around them, Luna Rivers was having fun. "This changes everything," Volkoth said quietly. If humans can perform at this level, we'll need to completely re-evaluate their role in galactic society. Not just their role, Dr. Yexnel added, his voice heavy with implication, their potential threat level. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. A species capable of this kind of intellectual performance could dominate galactic politics, science, and technology within a few generations. Human colonies could become centers of learning that made the most prestigious universities look like primitive schools. Perhaps, suggested Kelmora carefully, we should wait to see what the human herself has to say about this. 3 hours and 27 minutes. The chamber door opened, but something was wrong. The usual hiss of atmospheric equalization didn't occur. Instead, there was a moment of perfect silence, as if the chamber itself was holding its breath. Luna emerged looking exactly as she had when she entered. Her hair was still in its simple ponytail. Her university sweatshirt was unwrinkled. She appeared neither exhausted nor triumphant. She looked like someone who had just finished a moderately interesting exam. The hall fell into absolute silence. Fascinating system architecture, she said to no one in particular, her voice carrying that same casual tone she'd used earlier. Though I did notice a few inefficiencies in the quantum processing matrices. Nothing major, just some optimization opportunities. Dr. Zenmira's holographic projection flickered with excitement. You analyzed our quantum cores while taking the test? Hard not to, Luna replied with a slight shrug. The system kept asking me to solve increasingly complex problems, so I figured I should understand what was generating them. Basic troubleshooting, really. Basic troubleshooting. She had reverse-engineered some of the most advanced AI systems in the galaxy and called it basic troubleshooting. The temporal mechanics section was particularly interesting, Luna continued, apparently oblivious to the stunned faces around her. Your algorithms assume linear causality, but that's not how consciousness actually interacts with time. I made a few suggestions to the system about non-linear temporal processing. Hope that's okay. Professor Lixnell's massive brain was practically vibrating with excitement. You solved the consciousness-time interaction problem? That's been a theoretical dead end for 3 centuries. Dead end assumes you're thinking about it correctly, Luna said. But consciousness isn't separate from time. It's a temporal phenomenon. Once you accept that, the solutions become pretty obvious. Pretty obvious, she was describing breakthrough discoveries that would revolutionize physics across the galaxy as pretty obvious. Kelmora noticed that several security drones had quietly positioned themselves around the hall. Word of Luna's performance had clearly reached the highest levels of galactic government. This wasn't just an academic curiosity anymore. This was a potential security situation. The philosophical reasoning section was fun too, Luna added, seemingly unaware of the growing tension. Though I think your base assumptions about the nature of reality might be limiting your analytical frameworks. Limiting how? Asked Dr. Nimtal, the psychologist. Well, you assume that objective reality exists independently of observation, Luna explained. But quantum mechanics suggests that's not true. And if reality is partially constructed by consciousness, then intelligence isn't just about processing information. It's about participating in the creation of truth itself. The implications hit the gathered scientists like a physical blow. If Luna was right, then intelligence wasn't just a tool for understanding the universe. It was a force that actively shaped reality. And if humans possessed this capability at levels beyond anything previously imagined, she's describing reality manipulation through cognitive processes, whispered Krelvex, his mathematical projections suddenly taking on ominous overtones. This isn't just advanced intelligence, this is approaching the theoretical capabilities of the first ones. The first ones. The legendary species that had supposedly transcended physical existence itself through pure mental evolution. Most scientists considered them mythology, but Luna's casual description of consciousness-driven reality construction sounded disturbingly familiar. I should probably mention, Luna continued, apparently reading the growing alarm in the room, that I made a few small corrections to some of the fundamental constants in the later physics problems. Nothing dramatic, just cleaned up some rounding errors that were causing computational instabilities, corrected fundamental constants. She had rewritten the basic laws of physics during a standardized test. Which constants? Dr. Zenmira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh, just the gravitational coupling factor and the strong nuclear force interaction rate, Luna replied casually. They were slightly off, probably measurement errors from when they were first calculated. Easy fix, easy fix. She had corrected errors in the fundamental structure of reality and called it an easy fix. Luna emerged looking exactly as she had when she entered. Her hair was still in its simple ponytail. Her university sweatshirt was unwrinkled. She appeared neither exhausted nor triumphant. She looked like someone who had just finished a moderately interesting exam. The hall fell into absolute silence. She walked to the results terminal, pressed her palm against the scanner and waited for her scores to appear. The holographic display flickered to life and numbers began cascading across the screen. Perfect scores. In every category. In 3 hours and 27 minutes. The previous record holder had achieved 63% completion in 53 minutes. Error, stated the lead proctor. Results indicate systematic malfunction in assessment protocols. Run diagnostics, Luna said quietly. It was the first time anyone had heard her speak. Her voice was calm, unremarkable, the tone someone might use to suggest checking the weather. The proctors complied, running full system diagnostics. Every component checked out. Every algorithm functioned correctly. Every measurement was accurate. Lunar rivers of Earth had just achieved the impossible. How? Dr. Yexnell approached her, his massive intellect apparently unable to process what he'd witnessed. How did you solve the infinite regression problem? Our best theorists have been working on that for centuries. Luna shrugged. Pattern recognition. Once you see the underlying structure, the solution becomes obvious. Obvious? Tulven, the neurobiologist, was frantically scanning her with every sensor at his disposal. The neural pathways required for that level of processing should be... Where are they? Your brain activity shows normal human ranges. That's because I'm not trying to be superhuman, Luna replied, tucking her book under her arm. I'm just being human. The gathered aliens exchanged glances that ranged from confusion to terror. This made no sense. Humans were supposed to be the galaxy's endurance specialists, not its intellectual titans. They were famous for surviving impossible odds, not for solving impossible problems. Your species ranking, Kelmora managed to stammer, it's never been above the 75th percentile for cognitive ability. That's because we've never been properly tested, Luna said. Your assessments measure processing speed, memory capacity, computational ability. You're testing machines pretending to be minds. She gestured toward the chamber. That test wasn't about intelligence. It was about creativity, about seeing connections that don't exist until you make them exist, about finding solutions to problems that shouldn't have solutions. Impossible, whispered the Zenthari physicist. The mathematical proofs in Section 12 violate basic logical principles. Only if you assume logic is absolute, Luna replied. But logic is just a tool. When the tool doesn't work, you make a new one. The implications were staggering. If humans could routinely perform at this level, it would revolutionize galactic society. Human colonies would become intellectual powerhouses. Human students would dominate the most prestigious academies. Human scientists would... Oh, we won't, Luna said, apparently reading their thoughts. This was a one-time demonstration. Humans don't generally enjoy showing off, but surely your species will want to leverage this advantage, Dr. Yexnol pressed. The political implications alone. Luna smiled for the first time. It was a small, almost sad expression. Dr. Yexnol, what's your species' greatest achievement? The transcendence equations, he replied proudly. Mathematical proofs that describe the fundamental nature of reality itself. Beautiful work, Luna nodded. And what did you do with them? We used them to build better computers, more efficient starships, superior weapons. Exactly. You took something magnificent and made it practical. Luna adjusted her book again. Humans don't think that way. We solve problems because the problems are interesting. We create art because beauty matters. We explore space because we're curious about what's out there. But the power, Tulven insisted, the potential for advancement is exactly why we won't use it, Luna finished. Power corrupts. Potential becomes expectation, and expectation kills creativity. She began walking toward the exit, then paused. Besides, the test results are going to be classified anyway. Galactic Council Protocol 447. Any assessment scores that exceed established parameters by more than 3 standard deviations are automatically sealed for security reasons. The proctor's mechanical voices created a brief buzz of consultation. Confirmed. Results exceed classification thresholds. Assessment data will be sealed. So nothing changes, Luna continued. Humans remain the crazy endurance species that somehow survives everything. The galaxy continues believing we're too primitive for serious intellectual consideration, and everyone stays comfortable with their assumptions. She was almost to the door when Kelmora called out, "But why? Why reveal this capability at all if you're just going to hide it again?" Luna turned back, her expression thoughtful. Because sometimes the galaxy needs to be reminded that intelligence isn't about being the smartest being in the room. It's about being smart enough to know when not to be. She walked out, leaving behind a hall full of beings whose fundamental understanding of reality had been quietly, thoroughly, and permanently altered. The official record would show that Luna Rivers achieved a satisfactory completion of the Galactic Intelligence Assessment. Her scores would be listed as adequate for species requirements. Earth's ranking would remain unchanged. But every being in that hall would remember the human girl who crushed the impossible test without raising her voice, then walked away like it didn't matter, because to her, it didn't, and maybe, just maybe, that was the most intelligent thing of all.